Police officer commands a car to stop, then freezes when he sees her tattoo. The flashing red and blue lights painted streaks of color across the dark highway, illuminating the black SUV that had just rolled to a stop. Officer Daniel Cole exhaled, gripping the door handle of his cruiser before stepping out into the cool night air. Another late-night stop. Another driver pushing a little too far over the speed limit. His boots crunched against the gravel as he approached the vehicle, his hand resting near his holster. Not out of fear, just habit. His training had drilled one thing into him: always be prepared. The SUV's tinted windows concealed the driver, making it impossible to see inside. Cole rapped his knuckles against the glass. A pause. Then the window rolled down just enough for him to see a black woman sitting behind the wheel. She was in her early 30s, her face partially illuminated by the glow of his headlights. Her expression was calm, but Cole noticed the tension in her grip on the steering wheel. Too tight, too calculated. "License and registration, please," he said, keeping his tone neutral. The woman nodded, but moved slowly, as if every action had to be carefully considered. Cole recognized that movement. He had seen it before, not from criminals, but from people who were afraid of the police. She reached into her glove compartment, retrieved the documents, and handed them over. Ava Sinclair, local address, no priors, clean record. Nothing about her should have set off any alarms. "Do you know how fast you were going, Miss Sinclair?" She hesitated. "A little over? Maybe 72? Cole nodded. 72 in a 65. Ava licked her lips, her voice careful. "I'm just heading home." The way she said it, it wasn't a lie, but it wasn't quite the truth either. Cole studied her for a beat longer, debating whether to press her on it. Then something caught his eye. A tattoo peeked from beneath her jacket sleeve. A circular symbol, simple, precise, and terrifyingly familiar. His breath hitched, his grip on her license tightened. He had seen that symbol before, years ago, in disappearing case files, buried reports, and whispered warnings. It had been dismissed as nothing more than an old gang insignia. But Cole remembered what followed. Officers went missing, evidence vanished, and the department never spoke of it again. Yet here it was, on her. Ava noticed his reaction, her fingers flexed against the wheel. "Something wrong, officer?" Cole swallowed. That tattoo wasn't just a coincidence, and Ava Sinclair wasn't just any driver. Officer Daniel Cole tried to keep his expression neutral, but his pulse pounded in his ears. He had seen that symbol before, years ago, back when he was still a rookie. It had appeared in case files that were quickly buried, in reports that vanished overnight, in the hushed whispers of officers who knew better than to ask questions. And then, just as suddenly as the rumors had started, they had stopped. No one spoke of the missing officers. No one asked what had happened, and if you were smart, you didn't push for answers. But now, the symbol was right in front of him, inked onto Ava Sinclair's skin. Cole forced himself to breathe, gripping her license a little too tightly. What were the odds that a routine traffic stop would bring him face to face with something his department had spent years pretending didn't exist? Ava noticed his reaction. Her fingers twitched against the steering wheel, her gaze flicking to where his eyes had locked onto her tattoo. A slow, measured inhale, not panic, but calculation. "Something wrong, officer?" Cole's fingers instinctively brushed against his radio. He could call it in. Request backup. Get someone else out here to confirm what he was seeing. But something stopped him. Ava watched him carefully. The moments stretched, thick with unspoken tension. "That tattoo," Cole finally said, keeping his voice even. "Where'd you get it?" Silence. Ava's expression didn't change, but he saw something shift in her eyes. She wasn't surprised by the question. She had been expecting it. Finally, she spoke. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." That answer sent a chill down his spine. Cole's grip tightened on his radio, his thumb hovering over the button. "Try me." Ava's eyes flicked toward his hand. And just like that, she made her decision. Before he could react, her foot slammed on the gas. The SUV's tires screeched against the asphalt, kicking up a cloud of dust as the vehicle rocketed forward into the darkness. Cole's instincts took over. Damn it. He bolted back toward his cruiser, snatching up his radio as he threw himself behind the wheel. "Dispatch, I got a runner. Black SUV heading westbound on Route 17. The dispatcher's voice crackled over the radio, but Cole barely heard it. His adrenaline surged as he threw the car into drive, lights flashing, sirens wailing. Ava was fast. Too fast. This wasn't someone panicking over a speeding ticket. This was something else, and Daniel Cole had no idea what he was chasing anymore. The roar of the engine drowned out the sound of Officer Daniel Cole's sirens as Ava Sinclair's SUV shot forward, kicking up a cloud of dust and gravel. She was gone in seconds, disappearing down the long stretch of highway, the taillights flickering like ghostly embers against the night. Cole gritted his teeth and slammed his foot onto the gas. His cruiser lurched forward in pursuit. His radio crackled as he barked into it, adrenaline pumping through his veins. "Dispatch, I got a runner. Black SUV heading westbound on Route 17. The dispatcher's voice came through, but he barely processed the words. His focus was locked on the black SUV weaving through the near-empty highway, moving with precision that set off alarms in his head. Ava wasn't driving like someone panicking over a speeding ticket. She wasn't frantic. She wasn't reckless. She was in control. That was the part that bothered him the most. Cole had chased plenty of suspects who ran, drug dealers, car thieves, gang members trying to shake a tail, but they never drove like this. She took calculated turns, adjusted speed at just the right moments, anticipated his movements before he even made them. This wasn't just someone running. This was someone who had done this before. Cole pressed the radio again. "Suspect is maintaining high speeds, requesting additional units." "Copy that, Cole. Nearest unit is 15 minutes out." 15 minutes, a lifetime in a high-speed chase. Ava suddenly veered sharply right, cutting across 2 lanes without so much as tapping her brakes. Cole barely had time to react, jerking the wheel to follow her onto a dark, winding exit ramp. His headlights barely cut through the dense tree line ahead. They were leaving the open highway behind, plunging into the back roads, a place where no one would see what happened next. Cole's grip tightened on the wheel. This wasn't a random escape route. She was leading him somewhere. "Pull over, Ava," he barked into the radio, though he doubted she could hear him over the wailing sirens. No response. Instead, she pushed harder, accelerating into the darkness, her SUV handling the turns like she had driven these roads 100 times before. Cole felt a cold pit form in his stomach. What the hell was she running from? Or worse, what was she leading him toward? The road narrowed, the asphalt cracking beneath his tires. The trees pressed in from both sides, their branches clawing at the night sky like skeletal fingers. Cole's cruiser wasn't built for this kind of terrain, but Ava's SUV was. He could feel it. She was losing him. Cole slammed the gas, pushing his cruiser harder than he should have, trying to keep her taillights in sight. His headlights bounced with each jolt in the road, making it harder to track her movements. Then, her lights disappeared. Cole's heart pounded. He slammed the brakes, tires skidding slightly before coming to a stop. His headlights illuminated an empty clearing. No sign of the SUV. No movement. Just silence. Cole exhaled sharply, reaching for his flashlight before stepping out of the cruiser. The air was thick, damp, smelling of pine and wet soil. His fingers instinctively brushed against his holster as he scanned the area, his breath steady but his body tense. She was here. Somewhere. Watching. He stepped forward, following the deep tire tracks in the dirt. They led to a small, run-down structure at the edge of the clearing. A shed. The wooden door hung slightly ajar, creaking in the wind. Cole's flashlight landed on the door, revealing a faint carving etched into the wood. His breath hitched, the same circular symbol from Ava's arm. Before he could react, a sound snapped his focus, rustling from the tree line. Cole's instincts screamed at him. He turned, hand flying to his holster. A shadow moved. Then, before he could react, Ava lunged from the darkness, grabbing his wrist. Cole staggered back, ripping his arm free, his pulse hammering. They stood facing each other, breathing heavy in the cold air. "Don't," Ava said quietly, eyeing his gun. Cole didn't unholster it, but he didn't move his hand away either. "You ran," he said, his voice low, controlled. "You left me no choice." Cole exhaled sharply. "You could have just answered my question." A flicker of something passed over Ava's face. Not fear, not defiance. Something heavier. She took a slow breath. "You don't want the answers." Cole's pulse pounded. He had a feeling she was right. Ava Sinclair stood motionless, her breath steady despite the electric tension crackling in the air between them. Officer Daniel Cole's hand hovered near his holster, but he hadn't drawn his weapon. Not yet. He should have. Every instinct, every training manual, every briefing drilled into his head told him that a suspect who runs is a suspect with something to hide. But this wasn't panic. She wasn't trying to escape anymore. She was waiting, watching. "You don't want the answers," Ava said again, her voice quieter this time. Cole's jaw tightened. "Try me." Ava exhaled slowly, glancing past him toward the tree line. Cole followed her gaze, but there was nothing there. Just darkness, trees shifting gently in the cold wind. Still, she was tense, like she expected someone to emerge at any moment. His grip tightened. "What the hell is this place? Where were you going?" Ava's lips parted slightly, but she hesitated. Her hesitation unsettled him more than if she had lied outright. Then, instead of answering, she lifted her sleeve. The tattoo, the circular insignia that had first set off every alarm in Cole's head, was now fully visible. In the beam of his flashlight, the ink looked almost fresh, the edges too sharp for something old and faded. Cole forced himself to breathe evenly. "That symbol," he said, his voice quieter now, the accusation edged with something else. "I've seen it before." Ava didn't react, not to the words at least, but she was watching him carefully. "Then you already know what happens to people who ask too many questions." Cole's stomach twisted. She wasn't bluffing. He knew the stories. The officers who had disappeared, the reports that had been sealed away, the cases that had been closed before they were even investigated. He had never questioned it, because he had been told not to. He took a step forward. "The missing cops, the ones from years ago, the ones we were told to forget. What happened to them?" Ava shook her head. "You won't believe me." Cole's pulse pounded. The same words she had said before she ran. He gestured toward the abandoned shed, the one marked with the same insignia, etched into the wood. This symbol was on their case files, their personal effects. Hell, it was scrawled on the walls of the old precinct locker rooms before anyone scrubbed it away. Ava didn't respond. Cole clenched his jaw. "What does it mean?" She looked him in the eye then. "It means they didn't just disappear." The word sent ice down his spine. His mind raced. There was no evidence. No bodies, just empty lockers, reassigned badge numbers, names that no one spoke about anymore. The department's unofficial stance was that they had gone rogue, walked away from the job, left their lives behind, and everyone accepted it. Because they had been told to. "Then where are they?" Cole asked. Ava swallowed. She looked at him for a long moment, then took a slow step back, turning her head slightly toward the darkness of the trees. "You're standing on the edge of it," she murmured. "And you don't even know it yet." Cole felt something shift, not just in the air, but in himself. He had spent his career following orders, trusting the badge, believing that everything had an explanation. Now, for the first time, he wasn't so sure. The distant hum of approaching engines cut through the silence like a blade. Backup was closing in. Ava Sinclair heard it first. Her shoulders tensed, her gaze flicking toward the tree line where the narrow dirt path led back to the main road. Cole saw it too, the faint glow of headlights bouncing between the trees, the sound of tires crunching against the uneven ground. She exhaled sharply. Not relief. Not fear. Something else. Cole's radio crackled to life. "Cole, what's your status? Backup is en route." He hesitated before pressing the button. "I have the suspect in custody, holding at an abandoned structure off the maintenance road." Static. A pause, then a voice that didn't belong to dispatch. "We're almost there, Cole." It was Sergeant Marcus Dalton. Cole stiffened. Something was wrong. Dalton was a veteran, the kind of cop who had been around long enough to know everything that wasn't written in reports. He wasn't supposed to be on this call. He was command, not patrol, and yet he was coming. Fast. Ava watched him carefully, her expression unreadable. "They're not here for me, Cole." His grip tightened on his holster. "What the hell does that mean?" She licked her lips, taking a slow step back. "You need to leave, now." Cole's radio crackled again. "Cole, hold position. We'll take it from here." His gut twisted. This wasn't protocol. This wasn't how things were supposed to happen. The backup vehicles finally pulled into the clearing, 2 marked squad cars and 1 unmarked black SUV. The squad cars parked cleanly, their doors opening in unison. 3 officers stepped out, their hands hovering near their belts, not quite reaching for their weapons but close enough to be ready. The SUV's door opened last. Dalton emerged, adjusting his jacket as he stepped forward. Cole swallowed. "Where's the suspect?" Dalton asked, his voice calm, unreadable. Cole nodded toward Ava. "Right here." Dalton's eyes flicked toward her, then back to Cole. "Good, take her in. We'll handle the rest." Something in Cole's chest tightened. It was the way he said it, not like an order, like a decision had already been made. Ava didn't move, neither did Cole. "What exactly are you handling?" Cole asked, keeping his voice steady. Dalton's lips pressed into a thin line. "Just follow orders, officer." The other 2 officers, Turner and Reyes, stepped closer. Not much, but enough to feel like pressure. Cole could see it now. The subtle formation shift, the unspoken coordination. They weren't here to arrest her. They were here to eliminate a problem. His stomach dropped. Ava was right. Cole glanced at her, and in that moment, he saw it. The resignation in her expression. She had expected this. She wasn't just running from something. She had been running from them. Dalton exhaled sharply. "What's it gonna be, Cole?" Cole's fingers twitched over his holster. He had a choice. Turn her in, walk away, pretend none of this was his problem, keep his career. Or, Cole exhaled and drew his weapon. Not at Ava, at Dalton. The sergeant barely reacted, but Turner and Reyes did. Their hands snapped to their holsters, hesitation flickering in their eyes as they realized what was happening. Cole's voice was steady, unshaking. "She's coming with me." Dalton sighed, almost disappointed. Wrong choice. The clearing held its breath, and then everything exploded into motion. The weight of Daniel Cole's gun felt heavier than ever as he leveled it at Sergeant Marcus Dalton. For years, he had trusted this man. Followed orders, believed in the badge. But now, staring into Dalton's unreadable expression, Cole understood something he could never take back. The badge didn't mean justice. It meant obedience. And tonight, obedience would get Ava Sinclair killed. "Cole, put the gun down," Dalton said smoothly, like a father scolding a reckless son. Like this was just another training exercise. Behind him, Turner and Reyes shifted, their hands hovering near their holsters, eyes darting between Cole and Ava. Cole didn't move. Ava remained still, but he could feel her watching him, studying him, testing if he was really going to go through with this. "Take her in, Cole." "That's an order," Dalton continued, his tone never rising, never revealing an ounce of doubt. Because he had none. Cole clenched his jaw. This was wrong. Everything about this was wrong. The way they had shown up so quickly, the way no one had asked a single question about the pursuit, the way Dalton wasn't following protocol, no request for backup, no Miranda rights, no official charge. This wasn't an arrest. This was an execution. "Where are you taking her?" Cole asked, his voice tight. Dalton sighed, like a man forced to explain the obvious. "Not your concern." A sick feeling coiled in Cole's gut. He thought about every missing officer, every closed case, every report that had been redacted into nothing. He had never asked questions before. But now, he couldn't ignore the answers staring him in the face. His fingers flexed around the grip of his gun. If he backed down now, he knew exactly how this would end. Dalton took a step closer. "Son, think carefully. This is your career. This is your life. You think one suspect is worth throwing that away?" Cole swallowed. No, it wasn't about one suspect. It was about all of them. The ones who had never made it back to their homes. The ones who had vanished without a trace. Ava's voice was barely above a whisper. "If you let them take me, you'll never hear from me again." Dalton's eyes narrowed. "So what's it gonna be, Cole?" Cole inhaled deeply and made his decision. He stepped back, keeping his gun raised, shifting his stance toward Ava instead of against her. "We're leaving." Dalton's expression never changed. But his silence said everything. Cole had just made himself a target. For a second, no one moved. The clearing was still, tension coiled like a wire about to snap. Then Ava moved first. She lunged for the SUV, yanking open the driver's door. Cole stepped back toward her, his gun still raised, his heart pounding like a war drum in his chest. Dalton's expression never changed. He didn't need to react. He had already made up his mind. "Stand down," Cole barked, his voice sharper than he expected. Turner and Reyes didn't listen. Reyes's hand shot toward his holster. Cole barely had time to react before he twisted, firing a single warning shot into the dirt between them. Silence. Reyes froze, his fingers twitching over his gun but not daring to draw it. Turner took a hesitant step back. They weren't expecting him to fight back. Dalton exhaled slowly, shaking his head. "You don't know what you're doing, Cole." Cole didn't answer. Instead, he moved toward the passenger side of the SUV, flung the door open, and climbed in. Ava was already slamming the gear shift into drive. Tires spun. Dirt kicked up. Then, they were gone. Cole barely had time to buckle his seatbelt before Ava hit the gas, the SUV rocketing through the trees, bouncing over rough terrain. In the rearview mirror, the headlights of the squad cars flared to life. Dalton wasn't going to let them go. Cole grabbed the radio, clipped to his vest, instinct taking over. Calling for backup, alerting dispatch, getting help. He stopped himself. They weren't going to help. This wasn't about a fugitive. This was about a cover-up. He dropped the radio. He was on his own now. The squad cars were closing in fast, cutting through the night like wolves hunting prey. Cole exhaled sharply and turned to Ava. "You better have a plan." Ava didn't look at him. Her hands were steady on the wheel, her eyes locked on the road ahead. "I have a destination," she said. Cole clenched his jaw. That would have to be enough. The SUV tore through the back roads, kicking up dirt and gravel as Ava Sinclair maneuvered through the darkness like she had driven these roads 1,000 times. Officer Daniel Cole's heart pounded, but his mind was sharper than ever. Behind them, the squad cars were relentless, their headlights bouncing through the trees, their engines roaring as they closed the distance. This wasn't a pursuit to make an arrest. This was a hunt. Cole clenched his fists. He had been on the other side of these chases before. He knew exactly how they ended. "They won't stop, will they?" Cole muttered. Ava kept her eyes forward. "Not until we're gone. Or dead." Her voice was flat, certain, like she had made peace with it. Cole hadn't. "You said the officers didn't just disappear." His voice was tight. "What happened to them?" Ava exhaled, gripping the wheel. "Some of them never came back, but some did." Cole's stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" Ava glanced at him for the first time since the chase began. In the dim glow of the dashboard, her expression wasn't fear. It was something worse. "I mean, the ones who returned weren't the same." A chill crawled up Cole's spine. "What the hell does that mean?" Ava swallowed hard. "The officers who vanished, they didn't just leave. They were taken. Some of them were brought back. But when they returned, they were different. Off. Like they weren't themselves anymore." Cole's pulse pounded. Taken. He had heard the whispers before. The cases that didn't make sense, the ones no one investigated, the missing cops that were erased from history, and the ones that returned but refused to talk about where they had been. His chest tightened as an ice-cold realization hit him. "I was supposed to be one of them." Ava nodded. "And now you've made yourself a target all over again." Cole stared ahead into the darkness. The truth was closing in on him faster than the squad cars behind them. The weight of Ava's words settled in Cole's chest like lead. He had spent his career believing in the system, trusting that the badge meant something. But now, the very people he had worked alongside were the ones hunting him down. Up ahead, the road disappeared into the thick darkness of the woods. Behind them, the squad cars didn't slow. They were gaining ground, too fast, too determined. Cole's grip tightened. They weren't here to bring him in. They were here to make him disappear. Ava's voice was calm, too calm. "We have one shot at this." Cole swallowed, his instincts screaming. "Where are we going?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she took a hard left, veering off the road onto an overgrown trail. The SUV lurched violently, bouncing over uneven terrain as branches scraped against the windows. Cole braced himself. They were running out of time. The squad cars followed, their headlights slicing through the trees like hunting knives. Ava exhaled. "Hold on." Cole barely had time to register her words before she yanked the wheel hard, sending the SUV skidding onto a narrow bridge. The wooden planks creaked under their weight, but Ava didn't slow down. Cole twisted in his seat, heart hammering. The first squad car was right behind them. Ava hit the gas. The bridge wasn't built for this kind of weight. Then, the sound of splintering wood. Cole turned just in time to see the second squad car hesitate, too late. The bridge collapsed beneath it. The vehicle plunged into the darkness below, swallowed by the river. The first squad car slammed on its brakes, stopping just short of the collapse. Ava didn't look back. She just kept driving. Cole exhaled, his pulse racing. They weren't safe yet, but they had bought themselves time. "You could have walked away," Ava said, her voice softer now. Cole stared out at the endless road ahead, knowing there was no going back to the life he had before. His jaw tightened. Not anymore. Ava nodded. Neither of them spoke again. They had a long way to go. And they weren't out of danger yet. The night stretched endlessly ahead, the narrow dirt road disappearing into the darkness as Ava pushed the SUV forward, the engine humming beneath the tension that filled the cabin. The chase was over, for now. But Cole knew this wasn't victory. It was a temporary delay. The department wouldn't stop. Dalton wouldn't stop. Cole had spent years believing he was on the right side of the law. Now he was a fugitive, sitting next to a woman who had been running for much longer than he had. He let out a slow breath. "Where are we going?" Ava didn't take her eyes off the road. "Somewhere they won't find us right away." It wasn't an answer, but Cole didn't push. He wasn't sure he wanted to know. His mind churned through the events of the night, the tattoo, the missing officers, the warnings whispered in the halls of the precinct that he had ignored for years. And the worst part? Ava was right. He never questioned why he hadn't been taken. He had been spared. But spared for what? The SUV jolted over a deep pothole, snapping Cole out of his thoughts. He glanced at the side mirror. No headlights. No pursuit. But that didn't mean they were safe. Dalton wasn't the kind of man who left loose ends. Ava exhaled. "You don't regret it, do you?" Cole clenched his jaw. He had drawn his gun on his own people, turned his back on everything he had built. But regret? No. His fingers drummed against his knee as he stared out into the black void of the trees. "I think regret is what got me this far." Ava let out a dry chuckle, but it lacked any real humor. "Then I hope you're ready, Cole, because once we reach where we're going, there's no turning back." Cole's pulse pounded. For the first time in his life, he wasn't chasing a suspect. He was chasing the truth. And whatever was waiting at the end of the road, it was bigger than either of them.